Hello, everyone. Welcome to a big race week.
Huge race week. Gigantic, huge, epic, as the kids like to say these days. It is July 16th, the year. Yeah, it's still 2024. Welcome aboard, everybody. Listen to Crushing Iron Podcast, and this is episode 782.
Yep.
It's kind of this weekend kind of snuck up on me.
Yeah,
with how big it was. I mean, I know it's been, you got these, and you work like you and I, like, work with athletes that are, last week was a busy weekend.
Yep.
You had Muncie on Saturday, then you had Maine, and then you got Oregon this weekend. You got Ohio. You got Lake Placid. The next weekend is Maine. I mean, it's right now. It's a really it's a busy stretch, and yeah, Lake Placid's a huge race, huge Ironman race for the Pro Series. We got a ton of athletes there, but yeah, you're in the thick of it. You kind of get like at least I did. I got like a little lull right there in July 4th because there's besides like the occasional firecracker 5K, you ain't got much going on.
Mm-hmm.
And then you're like, it's slow down for a bit. Take a few days off, hang out with the fam. And then all of a sudden you come back. We had Muskoka going on, but then I was like, bam, you're back in the thick of it. And everything seems to be right around the corner, which is awesome. But yeah, it's all over the place. You get people prepping for big races. You got race weeks. You got final builds. You got all the questions. And, this is the time of year where you got, again, you're undulating you could have 6 different athletes, and you got one who's done for the year. It's kind of starting their plan of attack for 2025. You got another one who's entering, the first build of their race in November, and they've got questions about that. And you got an athlete who's got a race week like Lake Placid or Ohio or anything else you got going on this weekend. And then you got people who are just starting their build for their, maybe their final build, excuse me, for their big race. I want to know what that looks like. It's just you always have people in like every end of the, almost like covering a 12-month spectrum, because then, you work with athletes across the international, and they're looking at totally different, peak season. And so it's every, I think January is the only month that I don't have an athlete doing like a 70.3 or a full. Because you got all the way to December now, they've got 70.3s, and then in Australia and some of the Oceania type areas they've got fulls and 70.3. So it's funny kind of toggling back and forth between the different needs and personalities and blocks that these athletes are in the different undulating mindsets that come with the different phases and the confidence building and the doubt and the, have I done enough, or have I done too much, or what do you think? This is the time of year where I think maybe you agree, but I get more, what do you think about doing this? More than I get any other question between this month and September. What do you think about this century ride? What do you think about this Olympic? I know it's a little bit close. What do you think about squeezing the 70.3 in there? What do you think about maybe doubling up this year? What do you think about transferring from this race to another? What do you think about doubling up? What do you think about adding up more brick runs? What do you think about maybe sneaking up to do a course ride? What do you think about doing that? I'm like, let's calm down. Let's stay focused. Some of these are great ideas. Some of them are just lack of being able to stay focused for, 3 to 4 days at a time.
Yeah, you can always tell when somebody's watching a lot of YouTube videos or something.
That's right.
Hey, let me ask you this. Have you ever been running and, let's say you're going out for an hour and a half or something, and at some point it just feels like the sun has overtaken your upper body and your shoulders, and you feel like your back is melting? Have you ever had that feeling?
So it's funny you say that. I've definitely had it. Last night specifically. So last night, a little humble brag here, but our tennis team was in the semifinals. And we went out last night to play at 6:30, heat index 107 when we got on the court. And if anybody, if you're a tennis fan, you know that court temp is always higher than the actual temp, because the asphalt gets so hot that it just kind of like it. You're getting baked from both sides. And
You need to play on grass.
Yeah, I'm actually better on grass, but yeah, we don't have that kind of luxury here. It'd be dried out and dead. Last night we get out there. I swear, within 3 minutes, I was drenched. We were playing against a couple other guys, and I could feel like not just like my face because I was wearing a hat be so hot, but I could feel like my arms and my chest and my back just being like, I feel like it was like on fire. Is how hot it was. And I actually did something that I don't ever really do. I'm not really sure that I recommend this, but I drank my regular water and just kept drying off my hands and my grip, but never took anything on the face or on my neck or anything anywhere else. And all the guys were playing with, they were getting like wet towels from the clubhouse, taking extended breaks. And I tried to be the first one back on the court ready to go every single time. And because I remember a few weeks ago when it was also hot, every time I cooled myself like significantly, it felt hotter the next time I got hot. And I was like, you know what? I'm just going to stay hot. I'm just going to stay hot and deal with it and not kind of yo-yo back and forth. And if anything, maybe it'll mess with the guys' heads a little bit. And, maybe we can outwork them and out-fitness them, which we did. But I'm not sure that what I did had any my plan of attack had anything to do with that. But yes, I have definitely felt that. And it's not the most comfortable feeling.
Well, that's interesting, man, because I always advocate dousing yourself, especially on the bike. I think it really resets me. Same with the run, obviously, and I think cold water can reset my brain. But I think I know what you're talking about. Sometimes it can feel whatever, but you're taking it in. I mean, I could see how it could get obsessive, and there is something about just remaining calm and cool. But I think if that kind of feeling happens to you, like at mile 2 of your run, at the half or a full, you might want to regroup because it's not
for sure. Yeah, I definitely don't recommend that in racing or training. I mean, in tennis, you play hard for a second, then you stop, and then every 2 games you get to like take a pause. So that's a little bit, not a little bit. It's a lot different than doing it. When you train and when you race. And you and I were talking before we went live today about. You went out, and this, like we talked before, like this is the time of year where people want to get out and experience as best they can the course, right? And you went out, and you're about as seasoned of a veteran on that Ironman Wisconsin course as anybody. And I'll let you take it from there. But you and M went out on Saturday, and did 2 loops and had an experience.
Yeah, I mean, it was. Kind of par for the course for me to just sort of like steroid injection, get back in shape, like feel it. So it was kind of I think my longest ride was close to 1 loop before, and went out and did 2 loops. And as I told you, man, it was, I felt pretty decent, but that course is such a grinder. And we talk about it all the time about how a lot of, especially at Wisconsin, but even most Ironman, it really kind of gets down to your back and your neck and your arms and your wrist. Like my wrists were absolutely shattered the other day. But yeah, it's kind of like I just wanted to inject myself with a big fitness day in hopes that it would sink in this week. And I feel like it has. I mean, it was something that grinded me out, but the big thing was I think about how I've ridden that course in the past, and I've had some really good rides out there in the last 2 because of circumstances were kind of shit. And now my biggest thing is to let go of that speed, or, let go of the memories of not doing what I hoped. But for me, I've really gotten to the point where I'm able to do this, I feel like, but where you're just training to get better on race day. And then, you had a really lot of good points before we started about how, just riding a training run is so much, or a training ride is so much different than the race. I mean, you got, thousands of people racing with you, and everybody's going the same direction. That most of the courses, closed or blocked off or secured in a lot of ways. You got aid stations. You've got just that race energy that takes over. And, you know, it's that sort of the end of the road kind of thing for me where, you know, if I'm on the training ride and my back is killing me, I'll just sit up for a while and just chill. But during a race, a lot of times you just have to kind of flip a little bit of a toughness switch, you know, to keep going. And so, yeah, it's just really interesting to go out, and I really try hard not to obsess about what pace is or what the speed is and stuff like that, and just work on things that are going to make me better on race day. I was telling you, it isn't as much about going out there and trying to be like, okay, I can ride this loop and this, and that, and that's what I'm going to do in the race. It's more about, like, one of the things I always do on training rides most of the time, except when is just go up harder on hills than I normally probably would. A lot of times I was just trying to see like which hills out there I could get in my big gear just to get up it, even though I probably would definitely not do that in the race. But, stuff like that, because I'm still trying to get stronger. I'm still trying to get fitter. I'm still trying to get more resilient. And that's the way I'm looking at training. And I always do. My paces in training are shit, a lot of times. But there are certain times within that ride when, you just really see what you got, and you kind of, get over a hill and really hammer the downhill for a little while, just to see that, it's like, you talk about it a lot during like a taper or something, it's just to stay sharp or, explore with the ceilings, but not live on them. And I think that kind of stuff is really important, because you can really get too high or too low based on a training ride or a run or any of that kind of stuff. But you got to really keep in mind that it's all about the long term and the big picture and stuff like that. So what you're doing today? Are you working on something that's going to make you better on race day?
Yeah. And I think a lot of athletes, like, especially like right now, like you said, like when there are a ton of opportunities to recon a course and try to look for an experience, right? Am I prepared, right? How fast am I going to be? All these things are what a lot of athletes look for when they go out and do these, these runs on the course. They find a way to swim on the course. They're able to ride a loop. And I get that. I get that it needs to be, a little bit of a confidence boost. I know my fastest times overall, and I think my top 2 or 3 Ironman and 70.3 times are all on courses I never saw until race day. And so while I think it's true for every course, no matter if it's flat or no matter if it's, if it's hilly, the best thing you can do is prepare and number one, identify areas of weakness, right? Continue to maximize and use areas of strength. When you go out for these rides or these runs, the absolute worst thing you can do, because this is what happens. People go out on these training rides and they go to hammer it to beat their previous time.
Right.
That's what they do, right? They go out and I went out and I did this course ride, and I'll kind of take you through like a progression of what that might look like and where I think people fail on in how to execute and what you're even and the value you're actually trying to get out of these training rides and runs on these courses. Is you go out and let's use Wisconsin for example. So you come out and you go out and your first one's in May. It's a little bit cool. You're not under near as much fatigue because it's early May. You're not doing a lot. You're out there with some friends. The temperature is fantastic. You go out on a Sunday, not much traffic, and you're cruising pretty good. You make a good split, right? You do the loop, and you feel pretty great about it. And your speed's 18.5. And then you go out the next month. It's June. And you go out on a Saturday morning, get a late start. Immediately, there's more traffic out there. So your time is going to be slower. Everyone rides slower with traffic. You're more hesitant on all aspects, flats, uphills, downhills. You're more aware of things that could get in your way instead of just racing free. And you're especially on that kind of course, you're more careful on your turns. You're definitely more, I don't say hesitant, but you're a lot more strategic on how fast or not fast you want to go on those downhills, right? You're not being waved through. Even if you have like your auto stop on these, when you come to a stop, it's still, you're going to bleed time. You're also more fatigued. Your time might be slower, right? The conditions might be warmer, right? A higher RPE affecting your performance. So let's say you go a little bit slower that day. And then the next month you go out there, you got a little bit better base of fitness, right? But let's say you traveled in and you took 2 days off beforehand. Weather's great. You got some perfect Wisconsin weather, hoodies and shorts, baby. And then you go out there, but you're meeting up with your training buds, your training bros. And you get out there early and there's nobody on the road. And you go out there and you pace line and you hammer it. And now you're a mile per hour faster than the very first time. Those are all three very different conditions, right? Very different strategies, very different kind of, you know, what I would call not a scrimmage, but a kind of a summary of how you did in your training session and preparing for the race day. And then the final time you go out, you know, maybe in mid August, early August, hottest time of the year, roads are super busy. You're the most fatigued that you've been. And most people do either one of two things. They go out and they either hammer it to try and beat their last time because that was their fast time. They went on a road with their buddies. They were confident. They were going a little bit faster. You had somebody else making the lines for you going down the hills. And you go out there and you're less. You go slower. So many things go into that. And then the mind fuck, if you will, that happens when you get to race day. Because then all you do is start to think about, what miles per hour should I go for? Or if I'm tracking miles per hour on race day, you know, what that's going to, you know, your first 20, 30 miles, you're going to start chasing a miles per hour. Or if you see it dip low, it's going to screw with your head. You know, and you got conditions like 2 or 3 years ago in Wisconsin where they were terrible and miles per hour, you're just looking to finish. What you need to be doing is going out and attacking these prep rides, or however you want to call them, these training rides on the course, as exploratory and information seeking. Take it easy. Zone 1, zone 2. Go out there to experience what the course is like and what it looks like and make notes, not to go out there and see what your pace is going to be. You should be slower. Your training ride should be slower because then you're not going in tapered. Your training ride should be slower. Race day, you should be going a little bit faster, especially if you're doing on a 70.3 course. You should be picking up the pace. See what things look like. If you get done with it, right, and you go on a course like Punch, you're like, man, I feel really, really beat up. Well, chances are you've probably been riding inside 95% of the time. So the next course of action isn't one, go back out and ride the course again in a month after you've only ridden inside, right? All you can do is going to get beat up again. Now the goal is to get outside more, right? Or maybe do your long ride every single week outside. You know, sometimes I remember in the past, sometimes I would do like mind tricks, like for hard courses, I would train. And again, right now, pretty much everybody trains in their race stuff, trains in their race wheels, trains in their race helmet, trains in their race tires, you know, everything's geared up. I remember I think like some of the best fitness I ever had in the best racing, I was out there on the trace. I would purposely run like lower than advertised PSI for what I'm supposed to run, and I would use those gator skins, you know, oversized gator skins with the slowest tire. So I just felt slow. And then on race day, you're faster. All right. So again, when you look at these, what you can learn from these, you can't learn by going so fast. All you're looking at speed, right? And if you have an area of like a flaw that you see, a chink in the armor, if you will, the course of action isn't to not address it and then go back in a month and expect to be better, which is most athletes do. Man, that was a really rough ride. Man, I didn't take the corners well. I'm going to go back in next month and see how I do. No, the course of action is maybe you need to start working under cornering, right? Get outside again. Make one of your like easy recovery rides during the week, taking corners better. Like practice it, like just going back and forth in a parking lot with cones out, or pick a route where you're on your local streets where you can just kind of weave in and out. Hop on the greenway, right? That are usually super narrow and super curvy. Be on in your air position the whole time. If you're getting too throttled by being outside, right, and your core is super weak and you get fatigued easy, you're having lower back problems, your arms are tired. Now you know what to do, right? You need to work on your core. You need to be outside more. You need to make sure your arms are fit enough. One of the biggest things I think people underestimate is general arm fitness and fatigue resistance in your arms from coming out of the swim. Your arms being so tired is one of the biggest things you see athletes struggle with in these long rides is their arms get tired. They can't hold aero. Their shoulders get tired. All these things you can address, right? To me, it's not about the course. It's about the body's experience. It's not about the miles per hour. It's not about how quickly you got from, the point A to point B. It's what was the body's experience doing? What did your mind tell you had areas to work on? And then you take it back to your training and you focus on that, right? And understand and implement things in your training. Then maybe go back 2 months later, right? I mean, even then, if you want to go back a month later, that's fine. But you can't ignore, right, the areas that you thought went poorly and then go for it. And on the other side, experiment, right? Like if you're going to go out there and you feel like you've addressed the needs that are kind of the low-hanging fruit, the easiest ones to kind of address, then test things out. One day go out there and try to hammer the hills and coast the downhills. The next time you go out, try to, really take it easy and care from the uphills and hammer the downhills. Or then the next time take a more even approach, trying to keep your normalized power really even, which is recommended. Test all these things out. Don't just go to go, because what most people do is they go and they look for a miles per hour and then they gauge, was this a pass or fail? And am I ready or better for race day? And then they throw everything else that affected that out the window.
Yeah, I think that's all awesome because I like the body's experience in experimenting. It's very interesting. I mean, we used to talk about how we go to the trace and ride up those basically that 3 mile stretch of hills in aero. And the reason we did that is I just think, it makes you a stronger person in aero in general. I wouldn't necessarily always recommend climbing in aero like that or whatever, but it's just doing things a little bit harder or whatever. One of the things I've been doing a lot of lately is riding out of my saddle. Like I'll try and climb these hills in a gear that's ridiculous, but I'm just working on my strength. And the other thing about work, coming out of the saddles is like, I know it's not recommended a lot of times, but I've been watching the tour. Those guys are out of their saddle all the time, but I think they're doing it in such a way that it's not killing them a lot. You know what I mean? It's just sort of like, it's at Wisconsin, for example, for me, it's good just to get out of that position a little bit, and just kind of loosen my body up and, without crushing yourself, but like climbing these hills. I like what you said about working hills one day and then also working the downhills, and you got to kind of pull it all together, right, over time, because, I like doing hill repeats, and it's just like to build up that stamina and the ability to climb. I mean, if you're going to go out and climb hills at Wisconsin or deal with the roads and stuff like that, you got to be on them. That I was thinking about that because that course. First of all, I'd like to. I want to talk to. If anybody knows the mayor up there in Mount Horeb, I mean, ever since I've been doing that race, that road, that long climb into Mount Horeb, and then that road that goes right through the center of town, right by the high school, that thing is just unbelievably trashed. And I know that's a growing suburb, and maybe it's just put a little new blacktop out there. It blows my mind because it's not like a weird out of the way road. It's just really probably one of the most traveled roads in town. But anyway, yeah. So you mentioned tire pressure too, and riding with lower tire pressure. I'm kind of that way. I'll just go out and feel the tire, and it feels like it's inflated. I'll just ride, and I'm sure it's a little bit lower. It's interesting because I know that's the thing too, right? Is it ride a little lower, ride lower? They're trying to get you low, but I wonder if that's just coming from a Tour de France rider that's like 140 pounds. It's like, because when I'm up on, I'm a little heavier than that, right? So if my tires are low, I can really see them kind of flattening out, and I just feel like it's slowing me down. I know that's a trend, but what the hell? It doesn't make any physics sense to me.
It's a rolling resistance issue. And then on a course like Wisconsin, if you want, maybe honestly preparing for a course like Wisconsin, maybe you go out and ride the course at 115 PSI so you can feel every single slight divot on the entire course because your tires are so hard.
Mm-hmm.
And you go out on race day and you drop it down to, a recommended 80 or 85 or maybe even 75, depending on how much you weigh. And it's going to feel like nothing. Little things like, because I think road conditions, right now everyone complains about road conditions because you all ride inside all the time, right? Or you only ride on places that are perfect, and that's like, this is not the same thing, but similar. Like I was joking with some people at Nashville camp last week. I was like, man, every time I come back from riding the trace and then I ride back around here, because on the trace, we're supposed, you see very little cars. And if you do, they go on the total opposite side, right? They go in the other lane to pass. It's required there. And when I get back here, even though I've got like a gigantic bike lane, if somebody comes within 5 feet of me, I'm like, what the hell, dude?
Yeah.
Why are you so cool? But in reality, they're forever away, because the reality is I've got plenty of space, but compared to what I just did, it seemed like they were a lot closer. And that's a huge, and I had this conversation with an athlete who had a great race in Muscle Man, and they had their best bike split, had a 70.3 per yard. This wasn't the only thing that I think they gave the credit to, but it was riding their bike outside more. And just the preparation, I think the preparation of the total body is an area that people just absolutely do not take into account for these races. Like Placid, Wisconsin, Coeur d'Alene, roads and terrain like Louisville. People didn't take into account the wind for Texas. I just don't think that we focus so much on the course profile, that Ironman sends out, or that they pick up off, off one of those Track My Ride, websites, and all they look is terrain, right? And yes, fitness is fitness, but if you continue to go out there and you're not preparing your body, your core is weak, your lower back is weak, your fit is terrible, your upper body is weak, you're not swimming enough, you're a sitting duck. And you're going to struggle mightily when you do these. And that's like when we have these big builds for athletes. So I love to just really hammer home these long swim sets where your arms feel like noodles when you're done. Because that's that arm fitness doesn't just mean swim fitness. It also means the ability to hold position better when you ride. And again, every single thing happens from the time you get in the water. Every little bit of energy you use goes into not being able to handle the conditions in the form the way that you need to. And then that compromises everything. Even just having to sit up the slightest amount, right? You even had to sit up totally on your horns for an extra stretch. Like you said, not being able to go up the hills in aero or sitting up. And another thing you can experiment, you go up these long, 4 or 5 hills, and there is a point to where aero is no longer faster, because you're going at such a slow rate of speed. You're not gaining the aerodynamic benefits that will trump you being able to set up and then generate more power to go faster. So that's a great thing to experiment, right? Trying to go up this hill in aero and see what your watts are to speed and your heart rate. And then the next time, go up halfway in aero and then set up and produce more power, and then see what it is. See what your heart rate is. See what your power is. See how quickly you went up. Like, these are the kinds of details that pro athletes focus on, not their average miles per hour per loop. Right? They go very detail oriented. And again, what was the body's experience of the watts I was able to push, and what did they get? Because to me, the miles per hour are irrelevant. They are the final output of all the metrics that went into it. And the metrics are, did you come into the bike fresh, or did you come in the bike fatigued from the swim? Was the swim wetsuit legal? Was the swim not wetsuit legal? How warm was the water? How cool was the water? Is the bike windy? Is it not windy? Did you start out with a tailwind or start out with a headwind, right? That dictates the level of fatigue you have going into that specific part of the course. Just think about this for a minute. And this is like a subject that I try to just drive home so much with athletes who get so caught up in a singular session, right? Or a singular race, even if it's the same race. take these, in how your mind can be affected when you're obsessed about pace and miles per hour. So Mike Torelli heads out to Ironman, Wisconsin, and it is a cool, perfect 60-degree morning, and it's wetsuit legal, and it's one loop. He goes out, he swims, it's perfect temps. This is very reminiscent of the first time he did Wisconsin, right? It was perfect weather, one loop, wetsuit legal. You go out, you have a good swim, you come out, and you get a tailwind. The first, 18, 19 miles out till you get to the stick, maybe a little bit longer. Mm-hmm. It's a little bit uphill, but you get a tailwind out. And you get to the stick, and you're feeling unbelievable. The weather's perfect. There's no humidity. The sun is out. It's a beautiful day. You had a great swim, right? You're coming out refreshed, and you had a tailwind. A lot of times you don't even know you have it, right? Because it's a tailwind. And especially if it's like between like 5 to 10 mile an hour, a lot of times you don't even know you have one. You're just thinking you're feeling it that day.
Right.
And you get to the start of the loop with just enormous levels of confidence. Same level of fitness, okay? Then that same Mike Torelli with same level of fitness hops in, Lake Monona. It's not wetsuit legal for the first time in Wisconsin, right? Maybe the first time, but I would guess probably the first time. It's not wetsuit legal. Well, now it's a 2-loop swim because now we can't do mass starts for some reason, and that swim is significantly slower than the old mass start swim. So this 2-loop swim for Wisconsin now is slower than it used to be. So you come out of the water and you're slower. Same swim course, you just rode it twice. More energy because you're out there longer. More energy also because not only are you out there longer, but you're also not in a wetsuit, right? Again, none of this has to do with your, with the course. You get out there, and then the first 20 miles are a headwind. And not just a headwind, but it's also warmer the day, so humidity is higher at 90%. You're going to hit the stick having a slower miles per hour, having already been on the course longer in the swim and probably in transition, and then you're also going to have a higher RPE, higher heart rate probably. Yet you're going to compare that and you're going to say, I'm this isn't my day. None of those factors had anything to do with the Mike Torelli that showed up that day. That's just the nature of the day. And that is so true on every single training session that you do, every single race that you do. It could be the exact same course, verbatim. And you could be slower on the day, but it doesn't mean that you aren't as fit. Same thing with training rides and runs. Like there's just so much that goes into account that as athletes like that like to be data geeks or whatever and like to be, focused on the numbers and all these kind of things. But you're usually focusing on you're focusing weight. And again, those are all inputs. All of those are inputs before you even get to the output, which is the end split, the miles per hour that you see in Iron Track when you're done. That's the only result is that's all those things come into and equal the output, which is the miles per hour. Your time, all of the factors, heart rate, terrain, humidity, dew point, course crowd, wind, when the wind came, did you get through 8 stations, fine. Did you have a flat? Did you have a mechanical? Did your chain ring drop? Did you get in a good group? Did you not get in a good group? Did you have trouble going around a car? Did you get stuck at a railroad, crossing? How with all these things are inputs. And then when you're done with the ride, the output is the miles per hour. But a lot of people will take that output and make that the only input that matters, which is the miles per hour. They'll go out and they'll chase miles per hour. They'll go for goals. And then they don't meet that for that day. They consider that day a failure because they were only going for that goal and it was slower. But the same could also be said for what I call a lot of false positives in training, is you go out and you have a really great day where conditions are just spectacular and there's pretty much no chance of you ever getting that condition ever again on race day. And you use that output, right, with totally different inputs as the reason for you not having or wanting to have a certain outcome and output on race day. It's just those little things that get into your head. The best lead up you ever had yielded this miles per hour. And so now all you do from here on out is compare every race, every training ride, every training run to this pace or this miles per hour, the output. And you don't take into account every single input which a lot of times it's 10 to 15 to 20 inputs for most people that then get them the out. Because then you go back even before race day. How was your taper? When was the last time you got sick? Are you traveling with family? You're not traveling with family. Are you high stress going in? You're not having high stress. Do you sleep well the night before? You're not sleep well the night before. How was your training? Was it perfect training? Was it not perfect training? All these things are inputs from the day you start training for this race to the end. And again, people usually just flip that script and chase an output on day one. The day they sign up, they want an output of a 120 swim, a 6-hour bike, and a 4-hour run. And they start chasing the output. They don't worry about or pay attention to or work on any of the inputs. It's all about the output. And then they wonder why they fall short of that random output on race day.
Man, I think that's a really good point. I like this idea of training to learn things about yourself. And I also kind of like the idea of almost semi-intentionally fucking up my training sometimes, because I think a lot of people go into the race and they're not, if they're kind of training in a cautious manner, always trying to be, like you're saying with, normalized power, always just nailing it, whatever. Let's just see how far we can stretch that kind of stuff, because I think, like you just mentioned, a lot of variables. And then when those hit you in the face and things aren't going right, it's like, how are you going to react? I think you got to put yourself through that a little bit in training. I'll do that on purpose, just to feel it and maybe try to sort through it on the fly, or whatever the case may be, whether it's, taking hills too hard or going out too hard on the run, and then just readjusting and kind of trying to salvage or recorrect, or just correct something during training. I mean, there's a million opportunities for that, right? I mean, we talk, I know there's a lot of swim sets where you just like get in the pool and just go hard right out of the gate and see if you can kind of come back to baseline, because that's what happens a lot at the beginning of a race, which is also something I do. But I also have a mantra now where I start every race as slow as possible in the swim, just because I know that my adrenaline's going to be flying, everything's going to be going. I just try to rein it in from the get-go. That's, I think that can be carried across to cycling and running too. But the reality of it is, a lot of times, for whatever reason, whether it's somebody you're riding with or running with, they're going to drag you out of your comfort zone. And are you going to have the, I guess, knowledge or experience to pull yourself in and really be back to what you need to be back at? Mm-hmm. Or can you go there? I mean, can you push it? Have you held back too much? I think these are all things we need to explore with. And, that's one of the, I think, reasons that sometimes we'll just tell people to go out and rip that bike just to feel it, because it's real easy to kind of get into a comfort zone and have more in the tank, I think. But you got to find it, you got to explore it. And I think training is just, if you look at training as a blank canvas and this opportunity to, pick your spots and do these kind of experiments, it can really go a lot further than just being, always careful and cautious and doing everything perfect. Because then, like you said, on race day, it's going to start raining and you're going to get hit in the face with wind and have mechanicals, whatever the case may be. And it's like, man, I've never even been in these situations. So training is just, that's what it is, man. It's like, we talk, or we hear it all the time. People train harder than they race. So, or practice harder than they play in the games. And that makes the game feel easier,
You brought up some good points there. And I think the biggest one is when you go out, and this is the same thing, whether you're going on a course, recon, ride or run or swim, or even just in training, no matter what long ride or run or swim, or even just a daily session, is we get so focused on, and every athlete is like this to an extent. Some just obsess and make, more mountains out of molehills than others. Is, you get done with your session, you get done with your set, and you immediately go to the metrics and the output that were spit out. And you decide if it was a pass or a fail, right? But so much of training it and the ability to discover what is the best training for you is instead to gather input and pay attention to the inputs of what led to a great ride or run or swim, or a very poor ride or run or swim, right? Like had an athlete that raced on the East Coast this weekend, won her age group, third overall, really, really hard day. The temps from the 90, dew points over 70, water was like close to like mid 80s. I was like, you were shredded from the start. Like you dumped in so much energy in the swim just because the conditions, like there's absolutely no way to see maximum full performance there. But having said that, it's great preparation and great input to sift through on how to execute better at Louisville, or maybe not even better, but take the knowledge that we gain from how you respond to that input and all the inputs that are very similar to race day, and what we can expect on the course in Louisville. Yes, obviously longer than the Olympic, but there's still a lot of similarities to take from that. Same thing on training. Had a great ride or run today. Okay, what were the inputs that led to that? Well, I did this, and this. Slept well, low stress. Took yesterday easy. This. All right, so you nailed the inputs and you got a great output, right? Or on the other side, I slept 4 hours. I didn't have time to make breakfast. So I just got on the bike and did it, and this ride was terrible. I feel like I'm in a rut. Well, I'd feel like I was in a rut too if I got 4 hours of sleep and tried to do a ride on lack of sleep and lack of fueling.
Yeah.
So don't worry about the output, right, on your watts or your execution or where your intensity level was. Focus on your inputs. All right, same thing for a long ride. Yeah, I was really feeling good up to the 3 hour mark, and then the last hour and a half was just brutal. Okay, and my legs were trash. Okay, so the output was X during the first 3 hours, and then the output changed. So what were the inputs that affected that? Did you ride too hard? Right? Was your variability index, the difference between your AP and your MP, too high? Right? Did you go out way too hard? Did you run out of fuel? Right? Did you stop, which is what happens in a lot of group rides? You stop and chat for 20 minutes, you get behind on your fueling, you come back out, and now it's hotter, and now you haven't drank in 30 minutes, and that's what happens. You stay up till like the night before. Did you botch your pre-ride meal? Did you not eat enough the day before? Did you move 2 hard sessions from a Thursday to make up for on a Friday, and you went into this ride that's supposed to be hard, and you came into it fresh, and now you didn't have any legs because you placed things too close together? Look at the inputs. There's just so much obsessiveness about the output and just the output. And if you want to be obsessed about numbers and data and collecting these things, then pay more attention to the inputs, and not just in like a tree, but like seeing the forest. Like what happened the day before? What are all the inputs that led to this? And then you can change, right? If you want to change the output, you don't aim for the output. You change all the inputs that led to it. Okay, so if you fueled terribly, right, then let's try next week, same exact ride, try to fuel better and see what happens. And if next week the fueling was better and you paced it, but in your legs still felt like trash, then we need to go back and work more on the inputs, or figure out what input is colliding or negating so many positive inputs to eventually give us a negative output. Maybe it's you need more aerobic riding. Maybe you need more heart intervals at the end of some of these sessions, right? Maybe your pacing strategy, or maybe there's just some a weakness in your cycling capacity at one end or the other. Maybe you've got a really high VO2 max and a really, and also a really high VLA max. You're just burning through glycogen 24/7. So no matter how much fuel you want to take in, you can't take in enough. So you need to work on more fat max stuff. Same thing with running. Is it, what's the issue here? Is it speed or is it durability? A lot of people think those are two very different things. A lot of times they're not. Can you run fast for 400 meters, but your speed degradation is in the delta between this pace and at this zone and this pace and this zone are just totally different. That we need to work on. Not the output. We don't need to work on the output. We need to work on the input. And again, like the same thing with comparing courses to everything. I was telling athletes, and we've said this on, I don't know, maybe 40 podcasts in either direct reference to Muncie or mentioning Muncie in a different topic. My two Muncie swims are my two slowest 70.3 swims by about 2 to 4 minutes. And it's not even close. That swim is historically insanely slow. And that's for me, who's a high 20s, low 30s, 70.3 swimmer. Mine are 3 minutes. So if you're in the water even longer, you're looking at like 4 to 6 minutes or longer, how much shorter the swimmer is. Does it mean I was unfit going into that race? No. Some of those races were the best swim fitness I've ever had. But the time were slower because I was out on course for long. Just because the output spit out, 33 or 34 and change, right? No wetsuit. I think the course is 100% long, like the Ohio course used to be. It's an odd shape. You swim back into the sun. It's a crowded course, hot water, all those things. The inputs were correct, right? You just had additional inputs that kind of trumped your fitness level for the day. That brought it down. Nothing was wrong there, right? And I think that's just we get so very stuck in being a prisoner of the moment with one output that and on both ends, right? It's always chuckle and kind of give an athlete a pat on the back. Like, man, I felt unbelievable with my swim today. And then they say, but I took the last 4 days off. So it's like, they're not saying I'm on fire. I've reached a new swim level. They're giving credit to the input, which was extra rest, which equaled a really great output of a great day. They shouldn't expect that on Wednesday having 2 or 3 days of fatigue in their body. And so all these things, I think we can pay a little bit better attention to, a little bit more detail, and a little more respect to, honestly, in the effects that all these things have on, our race. Everything has an effect. Whether your want and desire doesn't trump reality as much as you want it to. It doesn't. It doesn't trump reality. It is what it is. And you can deny it all you want, but the reality is you have all these different inputs that go in, some within your control and some not, and the outcome is the outcome. That's why when you're in it deep and you're focused on the process and you're focused on just doing it your best, and you take each session for what it was, you don't compare it to 7 Thursdays ago on a semi same route and in the semi same weather. You just do it, and it's a roller coaster. Some like the athlete said earlier this week, some are great, some are awful, some are and the rest are indifferent. That's it, and they all have bits and pieces of information you can gather to then strategize how to do the next training block. To me, it's never so much about race execution, because you can also make a mountain out of a molehill there, because you could have a great time and think you did everything correctly, but really you just got really lucky with the day, right? You woke up feeling, smack dab on point. The weather was perfect. The terrain was perfect. There was no wind. It was wetsuit legal. Everything was perfect. Does that mean you nailed the training cycle? Not necessarily. Not necessarily. Because conversely, you could have had the best training cycle and had the best lead up and the perfect taper, and you ran into just a buzzsaw of conditions and inputs that led to a little slower output. Do we just need to reinvent the wheel and have a different race strategy? No. You need to focus on, what's working, what's not working, and then slightly adjust, right? It's like, I was telling an athlete, this is like 2 weeks ago, I said, adjusting your training to me is a lot like adjusting the volume on your TV or the thermostat. If you don't like the way it sounds, or don't like the way it feels, you don't go from 70 to 60. You just bring it down 1 or bring it up 1. Right? You don't reinvent the fucking wheel. You don't go get a new thermostat. You don't put in, space heaters in every inch of the house. You don't go from 30 volume to 5 volume and then back up, right? You barely nudge it. And because then you at least know what's affecting what. If you don't and you reinvent the wheel, it's like these elimination diets. Like, they don't tell you to eliminate everything, because you can't tell what's working or what's not working, because you're eliminating everything. I got food allergies, So I'm going to eliminate everything except for water and chicken. And then miraculously, I just I felt so much better. I lost a little bit of weight. My inflammation was down. Okay, well, you can't live off chicken and water alone. So what are you going to do? And the fact of the matter is you probably cut out, 40 different foods or processed things. And the answer probably is all you need to do is remove one. And that was the one that would have reduced all those things as well. Maybe you're allergic to it, or maybe something that just didn't agree with your body anymore. Your body's changed. So now instead of doing that, now you're eliminating 39 positives. You go 40 or 39 positive, but you just eliminate it all. Like you can't, same with training. You can't just reinvent the wheel. You have to, or reinvent your race strategy or based on one bad experience, even one good experience. Just take what you learned and move on. And again, that's why the sport is so great. It is ongoing education every day. And it's the same thing for the athlete as for the coaches. You and I learn every single day with every single athlete. It is a constant learning experience with no definitive end and no, hey, once I get to this, I'm going to retire. No, you're always looking to be better. Take the inputs for what they are and stop obsessing over the outputs.
Yeah, I love that, man. I think we all, changing everything is very common, right? Reinventing the wheel. It's like, that's the thing about when, if I'm training, like right now I'm starting to swim more and more, and all I'm thinking about is my left arm. I'm just trying to keep that thing from digging deep into the water. I'm trying to keep it higher. And it matters, right? It's like a little thing. Or if I'm on the bike, I'm just trying to figure out how to activate my glutes a little more and take some pressure off the quads and things like that. And we'll go into these things and it's almost like you have a great, I had a great run about a month ago, and I can't just sit there and go, okay, fine, I should be able to, it was like 8 miles. And I think I'm going to run that kind of thing at the end of a Ironman. Maybe, but to think about things in a vacuum is a little bit unrealistic, I think. So I don't know. I think if you've done it, you can do it again. It's just a matter of, like you're saying, what were the inputs? So I think that's such a really valid point, is that you have to look at all the variables there and what did you do and what was leading up to that, and were you rested, and how is that going to impact this day? And I just think we're looking at these long course races is when you're saying that, you're looking at one output. That is so dangerous. It's just a matter of adjusting on the fly, realizing, and we've talked about it many times, if you think you're going too fast, you probably are. If you think you're going right, you're probably just going a little too fast, or so, whatever those sayings are. But I think you really have to think about that kind of stuff. And because, we've just all seen so many races blow up, and they don't really have to, I don't think, if we're paying attention and we understand that it's oh shit, my tri-calc estimate is out of the window. Well, that doesn't mean this thing has to collapse. It might just end more, and you can still end, like we love to say, in the ballpark, right?
Yep, in the ballpark.
Yeah, I just really think that that's how we have to think about racing. You can't have a specific target all the time. It has to float a little bit, and you got time, man, to figure things out. And pushing yourself into the hurt locker too early isn't the way to figure it out most times.
No, and I think we can close out in a minute, but I think, one of the biggest things though is understanding and just kind of taking, and again, it is simple. It's taking each day and each session for what it is and not obsessing about what it isn't. And if there are things to learn, then learn from them and change them, right? Or make tweaks, understand that. Don't be, again, like a prisoner of the moment and adjusting and flipping the script based on every single outcome, which is why you see so many people yo-yo back and forth, right? It's the same reason. I mean, I see this all the time. I mean, this is pretty standard with in what coaches see. Because I've seen it. I mean, multiple times with athletes that you write a training block for for a 70.3, and then after 70.3, they want to take a break from coaching, and then they do a race, then they come back, and when you reattach them in Training Peaks and you look back, what they did before in the Training Peaks, they just copy and pasted your training leading up to the race that worked well under the next two, and then you figure out that didn't work, and then they come back and get coaching. You see it all the time. I talk to the coaches of this all the time. Is you see, oh, well, it worked once, it can work again, but it's not the training and the stimulus and the goal is the goal, but then everything that happens in and around it is the stimulus and is the input. And a lot of times that's changed, right? Your body has changed, your life circumstances change. Stress is high, stress is low, injuries here, injuries there, different days of the week you got to train, extra time off in one area and not like that's why it never works the same. That's why you've always got to change it up, because your body recognizes, and that just involves another, significant layer of comparison as well. And that's why it rarely, if ever, works. Some things work and some things don't. And that's okay. That's the nature of the sport, is finding, things that work and things that don't. And finding out something that doesn't work isn't a bad thing. It's a good thing. And a lot of times what doesn't work is only about a hair turn away from what works. Not not 360 degree turns of the knob. It's usually just a degree or two. Right. And again, like when you pay attention to all these and you get these, you gather all these inputs and you collect them, and then you get to a race and you can look at your 7 best rides and runs. You don't take the best one and be like, this is our plan for today. What you do is you say, listen, like the inputs that I want you to control are this, and this. All right. What was the average of what we were able to do consistently on the days it worked well? And that was to have this course of action right here. And also this is, and we talked about this. I can't, maybe it's after Gulf Coast, maybe, or a race in May, where you just talked about not asking about just the air temp, but asking about, is the water, how warm is the water, and is it going to be wetsuit legal or not? Sometimes we're talking, for some people, depending on how front of the pack or back of the pack, we're talking 3 to 4 minutes up to 10 minutes of extra energy in hotter weather. There's just so much that goes into it. And again, that's why I think it's hard sometimes to be objective with yourself about, we like to be naive, or we like to be in denial about the good and the bad that comes with training and racing and recon rides and runs or swims. Is, what was the nature of it? I had an athlete very admirably, make a comment in our kind of end of week follow-up. It's like, hey, I know I got the distance in, I know I got the time in, my load was a little bit lower than I know we wanted, but I was riding in a group, I did pull some, but I was obviously drafting a lot too. Like that is a perfect objective, maybe too objective, objective way to look at all the inputs that led to an output. Because a lot of times that same athlete might see 20 miles an hour for 4 hours and think, this is what I'm going to do on race day. Mm-hmm. And they don't take the objective view, and they look at, oh, well, I pulled some with these surges, and then I was able to draft for the 3 next pulls, saving energy and and doing my Tour de France full speed. Like that's all again, it's a lot of thinking. It's a lot of objective, kind of filtering through the minutia of training and inputs, but it's all important. It's all part of the process. It can all make you a better athlete and someone who's more bought into the process.
Yeah. One thing I've noticed in racing is if you have solid and appropriate fitness, you race better.
You don't say.
Well, I'm just saying, consistent performance and training translates much better to racing.
100%.
I mean, you know, you can get into the weeds and tweak and go crazy all you want, but the bottom line is if you want to race better and you haven't really raced well, you know, just train and be consistent with it. Don't try to fucking send a man to the moon.
That's very true. Because I mean, frankly, it hasn't been done that much, to be honest.
Yeah, well, go ahead.
Yeah, don't even. There's a movie coming back. There's a movie coming out about that, right?
I know.
I'm interested to see it. I'm a movie guy. I like going to see movies by myself alone.
My only question is why haven't we been back? But I digress.
I digress. And we could be there now for all we know.
All right, just send me some video.
It could be. I'm the last person to ask about that kind of stuff. I'm not in a fucking space shuttle, much less an airplane. So it's like you're not gonna see me.
No shit, dude.
Mars.
I believe you. I'm not going up there.
No, yeah, I'll take your word for it.
All right.
Yeah, that's all we got today. As always, we love you guys. We appreciate you. Go to our website, c26triathlon.com. It's our one-stop shop for all things coaching, camps, and community. Looking for coaching for the remainder of the year, make sure you click on the coaching tab and peruse the coach you feel is right for you. Reach out, or if you don't know which one, reach out to us anyway. We'll pair you with the perfect one after we look through your questionnaire. We also have a list of camps on there you can go to and check that out. We got an awesome Wisconsin camp coming up next week. Great group coming to that. And it's just a busy weekend, so we'll talk to you again on Thursday. But if you don't hear from us for whatever reason, you just kind of ghost our podcast. Race well and race hard, and if not, we'll see the rest of you on Thursday.
All right, buddy. I'll catch you later.
See you.
See you.